If you've ever felt like your emotions are deeper than what most people around you seem to experience, like you feel things too much, think too much, care too much, and then get completely exhausted by all of that, you might already understand something specific about how depression shows up for INFJs. And that's what this series is about. I'm Jhonna. This is Jhonna Unfiltered. Today we're starting a new series on MBTI types and depression, and we're beginning with my own type, INFJ. Before I go any further, the disclaimer. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Nothing in this video is a clinical diagnosis or medical advice. This is educational content based on research and personal reflection. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional. Now, let me also say something personal because I think it gives this topic more weight than just talking about patterns in the abstract. I've been dealing with depression most of my life, since I was young, and for a long time I didn't fully understand what was happening or have the language to name it clearly. I just knew that certain things hit me harder than they seemed to hit other people, that certain expectations felt like walls I couldn't get past, that even when I wanted something, the depression made it very hard to move toward it. I'm almost 40, and I'm still managing it, but the way I manage it now is different from when I was a teenager. And I think that difference is worth talking about because it's true for a lot of INFJs. So, let's get into it. First, a brief explanation of INFJ for anyone who's newer to the series. INFJ stands for introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging. It's often described as one of the rarest types in the Myers-Briggs framework. People who identify as INFJs tend to be deeply empathetic, idealistic, and highly attuned to the emotional states of people around them. They feel things intensely and process those feelings through a rich and complex inner world. They care deeply about meaning, about authenticity, and about whether their actions align with their values. And they tend to carry a strong sense of purpose, a feeling that they're here to do something that matters, even if they can't always define exactly what that is. Those qualities can be genuine strengths, but they also create specific vulnerabilities when it comes to depression. Let me explain what I mean by that. The same sensitivity that makes an INFJ perceptive and empathetic also makes them more susceptible to being overwhelmed by what they absorb from the world around them. They don't just notice suffering. They feel it. They don't just observe injustice. They carry it. And when that capacity for deep feeling doesn't have healthy outlets, when it isn't balanced by adequate rest, safety, and meaningful connection, it can turn inward and become something much heavier. There's also the gap between the ideal and the real. INFJs have a very clear internal picture of how things should be, how people should treat each other, how the world should operate, how their own life should look. And when reality consistently falls short of that picture, the disappointment is deep, not because they're being unreasonable, but because the gap between what they believe is possible and what's actually happening can feel like a permanent condition rather than a temporary one. Let me talk about how depression tends to show up specifically at different life stages, because the triggers shift as INFJs get older. For young INFJs, the most common source of depression tends to center around family, belonging, and identity. Young INFJs often feel fundamentally different from the people around them, including their own families. They process things on a different level. They're interested in different things. They pick up on emotional undercurrents that other family members seem not to notice. And in a family that doesn't understand or validate that difference, the INFJ child or teenager can start to feel like something is wrong with them. Like they're too sensitive, too intense, too serious, too something. Family expectations are one of the most significant depression triggers for young INFJs. When the expectation is to perform, to achieve specific outcomes, to become a particular kind of person, and the INFJ's actual identity doesn't fit that mold, the internal conflict is significant. They genuinely want to make the people they love proud. They feel the weight of that expectation deeply, but they also feel the wrongness of pretending to be something they're not. And when neither option feels safe, the energy collapses inward. For young INFJs who grow up in environments where emotional expression wasn't welcomed or where things were unpredictable and unstable, this gets compounded. They learn early to manage their emotional world privately. to appear calm or compliant while processing enormous amounts of internal distress. That learned suppression protects them in the short term. In the longer term, it becomes a significant contributor to depression because the processing never gets completed. Things accumulate without being resolved. Young INFJs also tend to struggle with not having a clear sense of their own dreams separate from what others want for them. The depression, combined with the pressure to meet external expectations, can crowd out the space where genuine desire would otherwise develop. You want things, maybe, but not with the clarity or the force that feels necessary to actually pursue them. The depression wins most of the arguments about what's possible. What tends to help young INFJs with depression is having even one person who sees them accurately and doesn't require them to be different. A teacher, a friend, an older person who reflects back that the depth and sensitivity aren't problems to be fixed. That validation isn't about praise. It's about recognition. And for a type that often feels invisible in a very specific way, being genuinely seen by someone safe can shift something fundamental. Creative expression is also often significant for this age group. Not necessarily art in the formal sense, though that's common too. Writing, journaling, music, making things, anything that allows the internal world to be externalized in some form. The INFJ, who has no outlet for what they're carrying internally, is much more susceptible to depression than the one who has found some form of expression, even a private one. Encountering ideas that validate their experience is also meaningful. Books, content, conversations that say, here is someone else who thinks and feels this way, and they have built something from it. That kind of encounter can be genuinely transformative for a young INFJ who has only experienced their depth as a burden. Now let me talk about how the depression picture shifts in adulthood and into middle age. As INFJs get older and accumulate more life experience, they do generally get better at managing their emotional responses. They develop more emotional vocabulary. They understand their own patterns better. They've had enough experiences with their own recovery to know that the depression isn't permanent, even when it feels like it is. That accumulated wisdom is real. But adulthood also brings its own specific depression triggers. Perfectionism becomes a more significant issue for many adult INFJs than it was when they were younger. As they develop higher standards for themselves and a clearer vision of what they want to create or achieve, the gap between that vision and their actual progress can become another chronic source of distress. They hold themselves responsible for outcomes they can't fully control. They take perceived failures personally in a way that goes deeper than practical disappointment. Relationships are another significant source of depression for adult INFJs. They invest deeply in the people they commit to. They give enormous amounts of emotional energy. And when that investment is consistently met with indifference, manipulation, or betrayal, the wound is deep. Not just because of the loss of the relationship itself, but because of what it costs the INFJ to finally accept that the other person isn't going to change. They tend to give chances longer than most people would. And the accumulated grief of having given so many chances to situations that didn't improve can settle into a specific kind of depression that's flavored by regret. There's also what some people call the meaning crisis. As INFJs move through their 30s and 40s, there's often a reckoning with whether the life they've built actually reflects their values and their purpose. If the answer is no, if they've been living according to other people's expectations, or just getting through rather than genuinely building towards something they believe in, the depression that comes from that recognition can be significant. The specific quality of regret that shows up in INFJs at this life stage is worth discussing honestly. Not the general regret of wishing things had gone differently, but the particular regret of having spent time on people or situations that didn't deserve that level of investment. And the complicated recognition that, given their personality, they probably couldn't have done it differently. That extending those chances was true to who they are, even if it cost them. What tends to help adult INFJs with depression is different in texture from what helped when they were younger. Structure and purpose become more important than they were in adolescence. Having something genuinely worth working toward, even a small channel, even a garden, even taking care of animals, something that's theirs and that connects to meaning rather than obligation, creates a different relationship with each day. Selective engagement also becomes critical. The adult INFJ, who has learned through experience which people and environments genuinely support them and which ones consistently drain them, and who has gotten better at structuring their life around more of the former, manages their depression significantly better than one who is still saying yes to everything. Allowing themselves to grieve without shame is also important. INFJs who can name what they've lost, whether that's time, opportunities, relationships, or versions of themselves they thought they'd become, and actually move through that grief rather than suppressing it, tend to come out the other side with a clearer sense of what they want from whatever time they have left. That phrase, whatever time they have left, is something I've been thinking about personally. I'm almost 40, and there is a real reckoning that comes with that. Some things aren't going to happen the way I imagined. Some time was genuinely spent on things that didn't deserve it. And the most honest response to that isn't despair. It's deciding what to do now, what to build now, what to protect now, what to stop doing now. The channel is part of that.
My dogs are part of that.
Learning things and sharing them with people who genuinely find value in it is part of that. Depression doesn't disappear for most INFJs. What changes is the relationship with it. The ability to recognize it for what it is rather than mistaking it for truth. The skill of moving through it with less complete interruption to daily functioning. The growing clarity about what makes the depression worse and what makes it more manageable. And the slow, sometimes very slow, understanding that the depth that makes INFJs vulnerable to depression is the same depth that allows them to understand other people, to create meaningful things, and to care in ways that make a real difference. Before I close, I'd love to hear from you. If you're an INFJ, what do you find most challenging about managing your own emotional depth? And has anything specific helped you find more stability? Drop it in the comments. This is a conversation I think matters, and your experience might give someone else the words they've been looking for. If you're struggling right now, please reach out to someone. You don't have to carry this alone. Thank you so much for spending a part of your day with me here at Jhonna Unfiltered. For those of you who are new to this space, I want to share a little bit about what I'm building here. This channel is my personal and learning diary. I am an ESL tutor and a solo dweller in the Philippines, living a life fueled by curiosity. Whether I'm researching the hidden traits of animals, diving into the mysteries of the natural world, or exploring the deep threads that connect Filipino, Japanese, and Korean cultures, this is where I document my journey. I believe that as technology and the world grow more advanced, our minds should grow right along with them. I use this text-to-speech voice to tell my stories for a very practical reason. As a full-time teacher, I have to be incredibly careful with my vocal cords. Managing vocal nodules means I must save my voice for my students in the classroom, but I refuse to let that silence my creativity. Using these digital tools allows me to share my research and my life with you while protecting my health. On this channel, there are no fixed themes and no performances, just honest documentation. From insights gathered in my global classroom to my experiences crafting a solo retirement lifestyle on my own terms, this is my way of staying productive and moving forward. I am currently working toward my goal of 1,000 subscribers so I can turn this passion into a sustainable future for myself and my pets. If you found something meaningful in today's video, please consider subscribing to help me reach that milestone. Your support, whether it's a comment or a view, truly helps me keep the depressing thoughts at bay and keeps my focus on building something beautiful. If you'd like to support my journey even more, you can check out the buy a treat for my pets link in the description. Shiro and the rest of the pack send their thanks. Thank you for being a part of this journey. I'm Jhonna, and I'll see you in the next one.